We can start with the Turkish punctuality. All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is our first spring Politics and Society webinars this semester, and we are very happy to have Emre İşeri, Professor Dr. Emre İşeri with us, a very old friend of mine, and a great scholar who studies, who has been writing, doing research, publishing on energy-related issues, energy security. And well, I'm very happy actually to have you, Emre, here with us. I'm looking forward to, me, myself personally. Emre İşeri, I don't know, it's like 2004. Since then, we have been like friends and colleagues that have collaborated time to time. And the community is quite small, the academic community. And well, I think this particular talk of Emre İşeri and this particular research that he's going to convey us will be very timely, first of all. And of course, like analytically, we talk a lot about energy security, Mediterranean, so everybody pretends to be experts on these topics, but I'm very glad to have you here, like, a scholar who has a great depth in all these topics, Emre. So before leaving the floor to Professor İşeri, I'd like to briefly talk about his bio. Well, it's very difficult to keep it short, but humbly he shared his own bio with us. And for sure, you have to go to the website of Yaşar University and check for his research and publications more in depth. He's a member of the Department of International Relations at Yaşar University in Izmir, and his current research interests lie in energy politics, political communication, and Turkish foreign policy. And as I told you, he has published, a great number of articles, chapters in books and journals, and some of them include Geopolitics, Journal of Balkan and Near East Studies, Energy Policy, Turkish Studies, Security Journal, South European Society and Politics, and so forth and so on. And he recently co-authored a study on media framing of climate change action in carbon locked in developing countries. And he asks, together with the co-authors, adaptation or mitigation. So I strongly recommend you to have it on environmental communication that was published in 2021. And he'll be talking about energy security in Eastern Mediterranean, asking the question of rethinking. And before leaving the floor to Emre, I thank everyone, all the audience that is with us today. Unfortunately, I was just informed that there were some exams going on currently at our university. So our webinar will be recorded, and well, those who missed the webinar can also get the recorded video of the webinar on YouTube. So, well, Emre, the floor is yours. Thank you again for being with us. While the talk is going on, you can write your questions or comments in the chat box, or at the end, there will be a Q&A session so we can discuss more in depth. Emre, yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ebru, for inviting me. And it's a great pleasure to being with you and present my reflections on those Eastern Mediterranean energy tensions. And I will be trying to provide you an alternative lens than this dominant lens narrative paradigm on geopolitics, that geopolitical outlook that considers and as referent object is most of the time state security. And that's how we define energy at the time of Anthropocene, what we has been, was also the title of UN Development Report, some of you may know. So again, when we look at newspapers on Sunday, 18th of Sunday, we came across with another step that undermines prospects for regional peace in the region. And while the explorationary talks were going on, we heard that Israel and Greece has made a huge, I mean, according to their scale, their biggest ever defense procurement deal, including 1.65 billion contract for establishment and operation of a training center for Hellenic Air Force. So from my perspective, it's again a last ring of steps that this time on the side of Greece to heighten regional tension. Before there was this Greek foreign minister who was in Turkey, you know, and he was quite non-diplomatic in his way of putting his views on regional developments. So what I will be try to highlight, as I told you, that actually those tensions seemingly over those hydrocarbon discoveries and their transportation routes are actually are presented as the existential threat in our region. So in Eastern Mediterranean, and most of the time when people came and asked me to give a talk on Eastern Mediterranean, it was you know, high on the agenda of those kind of geopolitical issues. And when they approach me like this, my answer to them is that yes, indeed, there's a tension. There's you know, the Celsius of Eastern Mediterranean is increasing, but not due to this geopolitical tension, but due to climate change. That's the perspective that I will be providing you. So first, I would like to turn on my slides so you will better follow what I will be trying to tell you. So we'll see whether I will be managing to do that. I hope you see. By the way, you see my screen? So you see here the picture that I prefer to put here is actually drawn by Murat Başol, and for one of my commentary that I wrote for Henrik Böll. So as you can think, think of the article's title. I was again similar perspective. I was proposing that going beyond the security dilemma, state-led security dilemma, to a new approach, let's say, and environmental concerns should be focused on. So that was the picture that, in a way, that put neatly what I was trying to say. So while the state, little states have been struggling, fighting, they've been neglecting the environmental implications. So this Anthropocene here is quite important term nowadays, and it's the term that describes the epoch of our time. So a quote from the report: the first time in our history, most of the serious and immediate and even existential risks are human-made and unfolding at planetary scale. So this new reality that the report proposes calls for reimagining the human development journey and leveraging the human development approach to support transformational social changes to ease pressures on the planet. So now on, the human development report includes planetary pressures in scale and raises two questions to us, and so tell us that we are now in a crossroads: either business as usual, so that will be end of our planet, or we will change the way that we will make a paradigm shift, and we will take a new path, a sustainable path that will decrease our pressures on the planet. So Eastern Mediterranean is actually one of those regions that feels those pressures, planetary pressures that we can see easily, and it is home to, according to this UN report, UN Environmental Programs report, is home to the Posidonia oxyanica. So it's an endemic seagrass species that, known as the lungs of the Mediterranean, provides oxygen. So apart from that maritime, I mean, underneath marine life, it's also feeling the impacts of climate change, droughts, water shortages, and indeed, when we shift our focus to climate change, we have this Paris Climate Agreement, you know, and 2016, it was approved by more than 190 countries, 190 countries, and approved, at least signed, signed in Paris, but when we reached to the ratification process at the parliament, Turkey is among the few countries that did not ratify the Paris Agreement, and now it is, maybe if we have time we can discuss, but now there's, thanks to some non-state actors in Turkey, they are pushing hard for Turkey to sign the Paris Agreement, and there is also now economic reasons for that, because they will be bringing in the coming days border tax, so that carbon-intense sectors in Turkey will have difficulty of selling their products to EU market. So this is all related actually with the way that we consume or manage our energy, and that's related with the discussion about how to harness global energy transition. And global energy transition, energy is basically about making a significant change in the composition of your energy mix. So you are changing the dominant energy that you've been relying on. So up until now, we used to have the age of wood and the age of coal, which was the industrial age source. Then we have, at the turn of century, we have seen the incrementally increased share of oil, as you see here, and following 1970s, at the time of this OPEC oil crisis, we see the emergence of alternative energy resources as well. But at the current stage that we have, still hydrocarbons are playing the dominant role. But in the last 10 years, as Ebru we've been talking about, and we see a huge increase in renewable energy and utilization. And at this point, we should also bear in mind that it's not a linear path, and different countries, due to their policy choices, could harness the process and could slow down the pace. But the ultimate level that we could be reaching is hydrogen. So there's a natural trend over there. So as you see, I've taken from Ediger Hoca, and as here he has prepared, as you see, a ternary diagram of fossil fuel consumption. As you see, the European Union is much better in terms of transforming its energy system in comparison to China and Russia. And most recently, China is also one of the countries that ratified Paris. They had this agenda in 1960. They pledged to become carbon neutral as well. So EU is doing much better in terms of decreasing its carbon intensity as well. And most recently, they have come out with their green deals. So here is, sorry. So as you see, actually this EU Green Deal is, on the one hand, is about transforming their, of course, energy mix and becoming carbon neutral in 2050, and by decoupling their their economic growth from carbon emissions. So it is, they foresee that transition, their shift in their energy portfolio as a way to revive their economy as well at the time of pandemic. So they consider as a tool, as a leverage in order to transform their economic models. And most recently, as you know, Biden's America has also declared their green deals as well. By some of people are giving reference to Roosevelt's New Deal, labeling his Green Deal, come out with, to my knowledge, $1.9 trillion and huge investments in green technologies as well. So there's, and we see that in that regard, two great powers in the system are actually pushing this transition towards a more sustainable energy regime. So here, as I mentioned, I mean, so the natural trend is towards more hydrogen based energy sources to be utilized. So the very source of sun, but as I mentioned, it is up to states, energy governance that could harness this process transition to hydrogen along with technology and price. So natural gas at the moment is considered as a transition fuel. So it is not the ultimate destination that we can. Some people argue that that's the point that we are. I know it's a transition, and in the coming years we will see that its demand will shrink as well. So in that regard, European markets actually has a shrinking natural gas market as well. And there's also this LNG technology revolution. Maybe we can discuss that later on, its implications. So here you see the shares, and European Union is here, and it will incrementally increase its portion. So for my purposes here, when you look at Greece, Greece is here about 30%. So 75% still they rely on hydrocarbons. And also in Cyprus, about 10% they've been relying on renewables. So when it comes to Turkey, and maybe that's the most recent figures from Emre, a think tank in London, even though Turkey had made significant improvements in terms of non-hydro renewables, as you see here, in last 10 years, still Turkey is still providing huge subsidies to carbon intense sources such as coal. And you see here that there was a increase about 15% of coal supplies in Turkey. And yesterday we have heard that we have a new patent, which is hydrofracturing technology patent that we have. And today, as you know, there's a climate summit is going on. Most probably we are hoping to find sellers for our new invention. So the drivers, as I told you, energy technology, price, and energy governance. So it's not just something out of us, exogenous, but there's also indigenous factors that plays a role in changing the trajectory that you will be harnessing that energy transition. So the critical question regarding this energy governance issue is what is energy security? So we need to highlight the part security. You know, there are academics here much more in-depth knowledge do have on critical security studies. They knew very well that there is no total security is not possible. So it is it's not just objective positivist outlook could tell much about the security that we are all secure. So always there is this perception side of the equation that we need to bear in mind. So when it's also about security, it's we have this. It sounds like it's more state-oriented, but it is not always the case. That is not the only way of defining. So while we've been defining, we should be thinking about more deeply about why energy security, why we are insecure. So when you say energy security, you presume that it is under threat. Who is under threat? For whom it's under threat? So how to address energy insecurities? And there are a variety of ways to ensure energy securities. Which way to go? So the only way to go is to rely on yerli ve milli, or markets could be an option for you or not. Should environmental concerns be included in our energy security considerations or not? So how we are defining our energy security is critical at the point of formulating our foreign policy orientations and the way that we harness energy transition to a more sustainable energy system. So the well-known, of course, definition is by International Energy Agency. and they have this supply side. Of course, they are the importers organization, which was founded following this OPEC crisis, and their priority is to ensure uninterrupted availability of energy sources at affordable prices. So here, of course, affordable price according to whom? So that's another food for thought. So if we include environmental considerations, let's say, would those coal and oil and nuclear, and if we take into consideration, let's say, waste management, would nuclear be feasible? So would it be included in the affordable price? So I'll just try to motivate you to think about critically about those concepts we keep hearing, but we are not actually thinking in depth on that, on those variety of concepts. So another ACE that we are availability, that's from Asia Pacific Energy Center, availability, it's utilized, accessibility, supply chain security, affordability, again, how to calculate that, which factors to be included, and acceptability, which is mainly to do with social acceptance. But of course, different definitions have different priorities. And as I mentioned earlier, international agencies, supply side, there is also the one who are demand side. So people also, let's say from the Russia's perspective, they're also concerned about finding their market. So the way that they've been defining energy security is different. I remember an article, a 2011 article, Swokul, and he was telling me that there are more than 45 definitions, energy security definitions. So here, what I'm trying to say is that there are a variety of different components, and it's not easy to come up with a single definition, and perceptions also do play a role. So I was proposing in this güvenlik çalışmaları that actually we could have three perspectives to define energy security. So one of them is energy geopolitics. So in that definition, we would have the referent object, as I mentioned at the beginning, that's the dominant paradigm that we have. Always the referent object is state security. So it's also close with mercantilism when you look at it from a political economic perspective. The assumption is that you're supposed to be independent in your energy. So to be independent, that's how you feel secure. So you don't rely on markets, you don't believe in markets, so it's not an option for you, and you would like to, and it's a sovereignty issue for you, so that in domestic politics, so your domestic economic policy, you emphasize on harnessing your own sources, whatever its environmental costs are, most of the time, unfortunately. And in your foreign policy, that outlook prompts you to be more adventurous, okay? And because you feel that if you are independent, then you will be secure. So, and that's the dominant paradigm that I will be trying to elaborate on Eastern Mediterranean. So the second approach is this economic liberal market approach, which was actually, I remember the first time that I was interested in Eastern Mediterranean energy issues is the time that the early 2010s. So it was the time that there was discoveries of Aphrodite and variety of fields. And some optimists at that time were proposing that through this economic liberal market approach, the functionalist perspective, that interdependencies will prompt, incentivize countries to solve their long-lasting disputes, and it will serve as a catalyst to and as a window of opportunity to solve Cyprus problem. But at the point that we have arrived, we see that rather than becoming a catalyst for solving regional conflicts, what we have seen is that those energy discoveries and their prospective transportation routes actually made things much more complicated, much intractable to solve. So the third perspective is this environmental. So here, as I was trying to highlight, I mean, if we were, I mean, objective-wise, if we've been talking about existential threats, we have this Anthropocene. We are at the age of Anthropocene. There's planetary pressures on, and there are, you know, tons of scientific studies on climate change, and it is due to humans. So it's due to the way that humans live. It is due to the way that we consume our energy that we have the existential threat. And this perspective is telling us that this is our existential threat that we need to look at. And that's how we need to come out with policies in order to address that. But as I was trying to highlight, despite that we have this existential threat here, that, I mean, supposed to be the existential, and so that we should be adopting that paradigm. So we see that geopolitics is the dominant narrative culture that we have. So I will be briefly talk about how geopolitics set the ground by giving reference to Busan and Weber, and the way that they have divided the world is by looking at security interdependencies. And as you see here, they did not come up with a separate Eastern Mediterranean region security complex. So you see here it's an overlap of two regional security complexes. So it's just in a region overlap as a transition point, as you see here. It's overlap, as you see. And it's quite complicated, and in a sense that there is also Turkey over there with the largest shores. And Turkey, as you see, is wearing pajamas. So what does it mean? It's an insulator state. So it's very difficult being insulator. Turkey is expected to absorb so those security concerns emanating from Middle East and post-Soviet region, and absorb that. And to make life difficult for itself, Turkey is an ambitious insulator, so would like to also transform its region as well. So we have this regional dynamics, state dynamics. There are also, Busan and Weber are proposing us, we should be looking at the regional dynamics separately from neoliberal perspective. But of course, then they're also talking about micro-securitization as well. So non-regional actors also do play a role in securitizing and making determining certain issues more important than others, and make things much more complicated for regional actors. And there's also societal elements as well. And there's baggage of history here. And when we look at Turkey and Greece baggage of history, unfortunately, it is full of ideational disparities. Maybe we can think about that. So that lens, in a way, I don't want to go much into detail, but it provides us different levels and different perspectives. Realism, constructive synthesis provides us to see how realism and constructivism in that regard interact with each other, so that to make a better sense. So in Q&A part, if you like, we can discuss later. And these are the results, by the way, we have prepared that with my research assistant, Ahmet Bartan. And this is, as you see, those sources that we are talking about. So the Sakarya, around Sakarya in total, we have those reserves over there. You know, we keep hearing about those energy discoveries. It's all about that, because Israel part is not our business. We are talking about those, and you see that they are not in the phase of development even, right? So because, and also at the time of pandemic, the prices are quite low and it's not feasible. And the proposal, Eastern Mediterranean, 1,900 kilometers long and 6-7 billions of worth of construction, that, and it is not feasible at all. But we keep hearing about that, and it may be, as I mentioned earlier, the European Union market is shrinking. and they have this Green Deal and their transformation. Maybe there will not be enough market for those gas, but we still keep this Eastern Mediterranean, East Med Forum is poisoning regional, continue to poison relations. And at the background, we have this territorial claims, of course, the reason that we've been having that tension. So that's the map that shows following those Libya-Turkey deal and also Greece-Egypt deal, that we have this composition. So in a way, as you know, we were also so happy that we have that sign, that because it will be the end of this. I mean, we propose that we put a blockage on this accession, this Eastern Mediterranean pipeline with that. But as a reaction, then Greece has its own deal, and we have another tension. Right. So this is the parts that Turkey says that it is under my continental shelf, and we keep hearing Oruç Reis was navigating around those regions, and Cyprus and Greece were insisting that these are all under our exclusive economic zone. So there are overlaps, as you see, and these places have been granted to TRNC by have been granted by Northern Cyprus, and you see there are overlaps as well. That is building further tension, causing further tension. The Eastern Med pipeline, as you see here, 1,900 kilometers long, and you see that among the other options, it is the least feasible one, economic-wise. But it is European Union in 2015 that labeled this project as project of common interest, and 2017, I think, Tolga Hocam, they called it feasible, technically feasible. But politically, when we look at the way that I look at, it's actually fueling further tension in the region. So, and Turkey's perspective is to, as you know, transform Ceyhan as a regional energy hub, and so that Turkey will not only will ensure its decreases dependency on foreign reserves, but also it will bolster its prospects to become a regional energy hub. So the way that Turkey looks at the way that considers region becoming a regional energy hub is related with its its economic dimension, security dimension, and also Turkey considered it as a leverage to expand its regional geopolitical influence as well. So you see here how its energy agenda is actually intertwined with this foreign policy agenda, and its geopolitical approach plays a role in shaping the way that Turkey perceives regional energy developments. So at the current stage that we have arrived, we have this group of countries that there's an alliance of Egypt, France, United Arab Emirates on the one hand, and we have this joint military exercises and this Eastern Mediterranean Forum. And we have seen that Turkish Navy is expanding with this, with our, you know, Blue Vatan, Mavi Vatan doctrine in line with that in order to protect that. We have been expanding the number of Navy, this aircraft carrier is coming, and submarines, destroyers. On the other hand, as I mentioned at the beginning, Greece and Israel, before Greece and France have their deals, procurement deals, planes, about again $2 billion worth of deals with France as well, and that's all heightening regional tension, seemingly over again those energy discoveries and prospective East Med pipeline. So before I conclude, I would like to actually raise the question to you, because I don't know the answer. And I would like to have a kind of a heated discussion on this, because I really have difficulty of figuring it out. So the ones who, maybe Selcan Hoca is with us, I guess, maybe could give an answer to my point, whether EU could be a game changer in the region through this Green Deal in line with the inclusion of all stakeholders, including Turkey. Is there out of this dominant energy geopolitics, or it will be like this forever? And what role for regional civil society, Selcan Hocam? Does NGOs have a role to play to harness that process and open up with a new horizon? I don't know. So these are my questions for you. Of course, I'm also hoping to get questions and inspiring comments from you. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm not that long.
Thank you very much, Emre. Well, I'm very happy actually to be really hearing these things from you. Nowadays, particularly, there is, like, as you said, heated discussion. There has been a heated discussion on, you know, Turkey-Greek dispute in the Eastern Mediterranean. When we were like students, we used to think that, you know, Europe would have this security complex there in Cyprus, and that would be like the resolution of the Cyprus problem. And apparently since then, we are still having this stalemate, right? We have more questions than answers, unfortunately. Well, even though you actually ask those questions to Selcan, and
because I saw Selcan over there, so that's why.
Yeah, Selcan is here with us, and I'm really looking forward to having her reactions also. But you know, may I just you know, ask a single question on, you referred to the climate change, you know, the different referent objects like ecological security as a referent object, state security as a referent object, and the role of the European Union that could play, hopefully in a constructive way, right? Today, the European Union passed a law, right? And that law is a climate law, and that was like a project, and it's like a long-lasting project that addresses 2050, you know, that the EU aspires to become like a climate neutral, you know, entity, and so forth and so on, with like reduced gas emissions. And you know, the EU apparently moves forward to that direction. And as far as I can see, there is not that much intention from the EU or other regional actors to intervene in this, you know, dispute in a you know, constructive way. And apparently, Turkish military tone is getting more aggressive, as you showed on the map. There's like also the Greek, you know, response in the same tone. We saw the, you know, the foreign ministers who actually were like extremely non-diplomatic in that press release. And so there is this stalemate going on out there. But my understanding is like, I think there is an instrumental value in, you know, prolonging this and, you know, increasing time to time this dispute between Greece and Turkey. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be that much, you know, in a conspiracy mood, but in my understanding, there is really not a real intention from the European Union side to play a constructive role. They have a completely different agenda, right? And probably this dispute serves to various nation state interests, right? We don't expect like a war out there, because there are multiple actors with multiple interests, and regional security is in the interest of all of them. And even the United Arab Emirates, you said that even though it's an adversary, right? I mean, the puzzle out there is, in my understanding, it's a temporary one. I don't know if you agree with this. I mean, I couldn't concentrate on a single thing, so I wanted to sort of wrap up also what all those points you touched on. So this is maybe something that we can discuss at the very end, you know, after the Q&A session, because I'm sure that there is not a single answer to, you know, my thought as well. So we have two questions. No, we have actually, yes, Erinç and Selcan has these two questions. Erinç wants to ask the Iranian approach of using energy security paradigm as motivating the political discourse of creating a Shiite Christian strategy for being, you know, in the Middle East, an important actor in the Middle East. Do you agree with that or not? Like, do you think this is the Iranian strategy, and interest, the Iranian interest lies in that, you know, strategy to maximize its power in the region? What do you think?
So first, I try to elaborate on your question regarding EU and its role. So what I see is that, I mean, of course, the Cyprus resolution is one of the areas that EU failed a lot. So it was when we go back to 2004, I mean, it was the time that we had this Annan plan, that time, and I keep remember, you remember those days.
Yeah.
And it was the Greek Cypriot side who said no to resolution, right? And it was then Turkey side under Erdogan, AKP, that is more than willing to finding a lasting solution to resolution, is finding a solution at that time, and indeed, you know, giving support to this pro-peace agenda. Now it is 2020. Now we have Eroğlu. So who is the one that is against this federal idea? Maybe, I don't know, but now things have changed, and the way that Turkey is looking to that issue has changed. Also, it was the time that EU has missed a significant opportunity. That's what I see. So it is also in that regard, it is we supposed to blame European Union in that regard. And also when we say European Union, there are, of course, there are professors here who are studying European Union and know much better than I do. But when we say European Union, of course, we are not talking about a single entity when it comes to foreign policy. I was trying to highlight that. There's France. You know, I was trying to mention about their lucrative on their side arm deals. So it seems to me that those lucrative arm deals are actually, from the perspective of France, is much more important than actually finding a lasting peace. Actually, tension in the region is feeding that lucrative deals, unfortunately. But on the other side, on the other hand, when we look at individual countries from the side of Greece, also Turkey, we should confess that really around the flag sells. Right. So nationalism sells. You know, I was teaching to Peloponnese University last week, I know, on Friday and Saturday we had class. One of the Greek students told me that if you put, if we come out with a referendum and raise the question, whether we put our money to defense or green economic transition, most of the people in Greece will tell you defense. We're supposed to put our money to defense. So nationalism sells, defense sells, both in Turkey and Greece. So we did not have much time to go into that. I was talking about Buzan. They're also talking about this constructivist side of the equation as well. How you formulate that pattern. Unfortunately, we forget those times, the golden age between Greece and Turkey, between 1930, Venizelos and Atatürk. They both fought, right, in independence war. From the Greek perspective, the Asian catastrophe from their narrative, when you look at it. They fought with each other. But following 1930s, up until 1950, we were in our golden age. We forget that part of the story. And somehow our media would not like to tell us about those. When we look at the turn on the first page, we always see that this is our reaction to what Greek have been trying to do, and we are so proud of our national senses. We have this pleasure, our minister did that, and you are so proud of our country. So that's the mood that is promoted, both among the ones, by the way, it's not just about those pro-government news agenda, news media outlets, but it's among opposition media outlets that we see that. The reason that I'm telling you that I'm running another project, actually now it's under review. Actually, I've just received that there are minor revisions. I was looking at populist nationalism in Turkey and in foreign policy, and with my colleague from political communication department on Syrian interventions. We've been looking at how media has utilized, serves as an agent of populism in Turkey. So you can see that how, different, not only politicians, but also how media and other outlets as well have been instrumental in promoting the nation's further, unfortunately. So regarding that, I forgot the question.
On Iran.
On Iran,
the second question is if Iran has an agenda to create a Shiite Christian in the region, that's why it's intervening. What do you think on that?
I mean, of course, we supposed to have. I have this reservations always. This, it was because self-fulfilling prophecy after a point. I mean, when you label certain countries, these are evil, and so it was feeding, in a way, your sense of this pattern, I was trying to tell you. So if you, again, going back to this Turkey-Greek relations, if you watch this TRT, Cyprus soap operas running over there, right? I don't know whether you've been watching it. I was trying to watch it for a while. But when you expose yourself to that soap opera for a while, and you have the sense that, these Greeks are all evils, and there's no way to cooperate with them. They all have the agenda of this megali idea. Okay, so you have that sense, and there would not be possibility for you to come up with a constructive dialogue with them. So at the end of the day, you will, and as you mentioned, Ebru, we would continue to have this stalemate on society level as well. So the way that I approach Iran is in a similar fashion as well. So if you, would like to, that's what Trump was trying to do. One of the first things that he did was to take his signature away from this Iranian deal, as you remember. So did it contribute to regional peace? No. So that's the way that we should be approaching, I think, rather than, categorizing and demonizing the others, trying to open up those channels of dialogue.
Okay, thank you very much. We have two questions from Atakan. The first one is about the EU's Green Deal plan. And he asks, why does EU continue to support, even though it was like, it has been declaring to be a constructive way and a role in the region. Apparently, there's a contradiction. And he asked, the second question is, if the Mediterranean energy actors would continue to exclude Turkey, even if Turkey offers like them and sort of olive branch, what would be the Turkey's rational choice? Rationality.
What is rationality anyway? According to Weber, right, there are 6 rationalities. So how do we define rationality? So I'm telling you that the way that I define rationality is we should prioritize climate change.
Yeah, and the question continues asking if Turkey should launch, its own green energy initiatives, and or continue to undermine the EastMed project. by increasing the cost of the East Med project. So this is probably why the rationality comes into play.
Yeah, I think my perspective is that if Turkey enters into this path of green energy transformation, so it will not be making those hydrocarbons problem for itself. It will not be continue to securitize those hydrocarbons anyway. So because it will be then will come out with more constructive dialogue, most probably with Greece, with Greek Cypriots maybe, and we will be working more on grid technologies, sustainable grid technologies that we'll be focusing on. So it will be changing the way that we perceive others as well. That's what I'm trying to emphasize. When I said this geopolitical mercantilist, geopolitics perspective, because realize that you're supposed to be it's changing, supposed to be relying on being independent all the way, but you miss this opportunities of having interdependencies. But if you change your paradigm, then it will also be instrumental in formulating a new patterns of interaction with your regional countries as well. So it is, by the way, of course, this constructive, the way when you look at from constructivist lens, it's all the time interrelated. So it's not just a single country is constructing the other evil or benign or belligerent, but it's all the time we need to see this intersubjective nature of relations. So that's how we could have a better understanding about regional relations, I think.
Very much, Emre. Do we have any other question? We have 5 minutes still, so if there is any reaction from the audience, you can ask. Yeah. Well, I think, this is a regional problem, and I strongly agree with the fact that, we have to reflect on what has happened in the history, right? I mean, we tend to forget like the periods of rapprochement, and we concentrate even like the very last week's agenda, right? So it avoids us like to have an analytical, long-term perspective on this dispute, right? So based on your graphs and maps, I think there are a couple of conclusions we can draw. The first one is that there are multiple stakeholders, right? And the nature of the dispute is going towards, or it seems to be going towards, and more in the direction of energy. But my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, this maritime dispute between Turkey and Greece centers on 3 core issues. The first one is the disagreement over the boundaries of the territorial waters, right? And still, we have that's a stalemate in the ownership of certain islands and isles in the Aegean Sea by Greece, right? The second one is the question of the 2 countries' exclusive economic zones, and I think we have been discussing the exclusive economic zone with like a lot of political references, but there is no legal or like international law perspective that is utilized that far. So we have to find a solution to that as well. And I think the last one, that makes a sustainable or a secure cooperation in the region impossible is the unresolved conflict of Cyprus. I mean, these are like the 3 core themes that I could just, still prioritize as the things that we have to find a solution. Because this is very technical, and technicalities can be sort of resolved by technocrats on the table, either from a geopolitical strategical perspective or from a constructive, doesn't matter. But when it comes like, I'm really looking forward to your paper that you just mentioned, populism in foreign policy. I mean, this is a huge thing. And with all the global democratic decline, with all these populism, around the world, I think we have to, talk more and discuss more about these things in the very near future, I'm afraid. So, yeah, thank you very much. And Selcan just asked a question to you. So she responds to you. So, there are some think tanks and civil society organizations that encourage Turkish authorities to sign Paris Agreement. And with the influences of Turkish civil society, EU and the USA under Biden administration, are you expecting positive steps in that sense? Adaptation of a Green Deal, and what are the main challenges in that sense, like, and the resisting actors? So it's like a whole sort of question. Maybe we can just
I would like to have a answer, like, due to civil society's pressures on our government has the state of enlightenment has that reached that point and took a decision to sign Paris and implement that. I would hope to have an answer like this, but I think it is more to do with Biden effects, and it is more to do with the carbon tax that I'm talking about, because those carbon intense sectors, even though we all the time, put our from energy ministry, put everywhere that our intensity comparison to other countries not that high, but we know that there are certain sectors in Turkey, like cement, such as iron, steel, and their carbon intensity is quite high. And also, we've been utilizing abundant portion of our electricity from coal, and we keep providing them subsidies and also imported coal as well. So at this context, I mean, it is not sustainable. I mean, let alone this environmental side of the equation. I mean, in the coming days, you will be losing your share in your largest market, and there's also this Biden factor, and also you will have the difficulty of finding money. I mean, funding, because your access to funding mechanisms will be shrinking in the coming years for carbon intense industries. So it is mainly Biden. I think it's quite important. And also this carbon tax is coming. That could be the main incentives, unfortunately. By the way, I think we need to mention TÜSİAD, Erinç Yerdenlet authors have come out with a brilliant report by outputs, inputs in Turkish variety of sectors, and they make calculations on possible impact on Turkish economy when this border tax will be adopted. So we should also mention there also, Istanbul Policy Center, they're also having their program, Ümit Şahin's program on environment, I think quite enlightening. I recommend you all to stay on tune and, look at their reports. There's Shura, as also, it's Sabancı University, they've been running Bilkent Energy Center. They are quite active in this, harnessing that transformation. So these are the variety of avenues that I think you should pay attention, because it is not only about, those energy experts just solely interested in which energy source and what's the price. It's beyond that, as I mentioned in case of European Union, it's actually a leverage to transform the economy. So future jobs, because one of the main problems that we have at the moment is this, youth unemployment, right? Particularly most of the jobs we've been talking before pandemic would not be with us. So we need a creative destruction. So that's the creative destruction. So it's a significant opportunity to change your economic model that will provide jobs for qualified people. So I think we should not miss that from that perspective as well.
Wow, thank you very much. That was a very extensive, session.
That will be also, of course, will serve to regional peace as well.
Sure. And we know that there has been lots of research going on, on the youth empowerment issues. So for sure that piece of research will link in the very near future with different, cross-cutting areas. energy being apparently one of them. Well, Emre, thank you very much. That was a very extensive talk, and I'm very glad that we touched upon like different countries with different regional actors, leadership problem, and I also thank the audience with these very intensive questions. I think we come to the end of our time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, I thank you
enjoyed a
on
lot.
behalf of my department and my colleagues and my friends here, students, for joining us. And we're looking forward to reading your next paper then.
I hope it will be published soon. Yeah, I will be sending you directly. Maybe we will have another
thank you.
Seminar then.
Of course, we'd love to have it. And I want the last words go to Çağkan and Atakan.
Okay.
So I want to thank to our department's assistants for their very valuable
I would like to thank them as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Yes, thank you very much, and hope to see you all in good health.